Giovanni de Bagnoregio, also known as Saint Bonaventure, also known as the Seraphic Doctor. Let's see. Now, it amazes me, right? It's one of these like amazements of God's providence that God gave us these two men at the exact same time. And then and then he takes them at the exact same time. Both Thomas and Bonaventure were contemporaries. Really does seem that they were friends, that they admired one another. And then both of them die, and I think it's 1278 at the Thomas on his way to the Second Council of Lyon, and Bonaventure while presiding over the council. Just an absolutely amazing thing when you really stop to consider it. These two just, and humbly in my mind, two of the most important people in the Catholic Church that lived and died right here. But anyway, so the Seraphic Doctor, a quick word. And I think if we are going to recover the scholastics, to ignite a true neo-scholastic movement, not just a neo-Thomist movement in the church, I believe it today needs to begin with Bonaventure, in my oh so humble opinion. We've had 100 years plus at this point of molding Thomism in every which way that they could. I think it's time that we give voice to some of the others. And the case I'm making here is that Bonaventure should really, I think, be our man of the hour. And fortunately, right, my little corner of the internet really makes no difference. But fortunately, I have heard and I have seen others say that people with a wider purview of the direction that the church is headed in than I have, and in intellectual circles anyways, that there is of recent a real increase in the interest in the Franciscan intellectual tradition. It's kind of in the air. And while there's certainly has been, I've seen it, and there will continue to be a kind of a backlash from certain Thomist circles complaining that this is happening, or maybe even I've seen some that seem to be like kind of, I don't want to interpret wrongly, but it seems like at times they're kind of mounting forces against us rather than working with us. But you know, it kind of reminds me, if this is the case, it kind of reminds me of that meme where you got like a circle of people and they're talking to each other, and there's the like one guy that's kind of yapping and they just kind of give them the thumbs up. I think that's kind of what we need to do to these people that are like freaking out that there's other scholastics that are being revived. The church has clearly held up these people, not just Thomas. And I have actually included here, and I would really recommend just to go back and watch the video that I have on the previous Franciscan theology, its place in church history. But just to give you a few documents, let me see here. See if I can do this. So everything's so backwards for me. I'm just going to hold it up here. One document to read, you can find it online, is Hierusalem. This is a papal bull recognizing Bonaventure as a doctor of the church. Recommend you read that as well. Go back, read Aeterni Patris. We do have Bonaventure recognized by name in Aeterni Patris. Alma Parens. This is kind of a transition period where we go from, okay, we have this initial period of recovery of Thomas, and I explain more in that video kind of what that was and what that looked like, all the way up until this period where I think probably the most important shift from Leo the 13th to the modern era is this work, this encyclical from Pope St. John Paul II, which I would probably say is a little bit more, it's not more necessarily authoritative than Aeterni Patris, but it's certainly an updated view of where we're at today, where Aeterni Patris was meeting that need of 1870 of having something ready-made. We have here by name, right off the bat. This is true. Let's see. This is true of both the fathers of the church, among whom least St. Gregory of Nazianzus and St. Augustine should be mentioned, as well the medieval doctors with the great triad of St. Anselm, St. Bonaventure, and St. Thomas Aquinas, right? And then he goes on to list some other modern names. But right there, right, with the medieval recoveries, that triad that we're getting from Pope John Paul II there, from Fides et Ratio. Anyways, go back. I go to at length in that video. Let me return here. I'm not saying, and don't get me wrong here, right? Because I very fair towards Brother Thomas, right? Thomas, I'm not saying at all that St. Thomas Aquinas failed or that we should lay him aside. What I'm saying is that we have a really big tent in the church with some very colossal minds that could help us navigate through and, where necessary, even really, I think, buttress us up and help us defeat some of the forces of modernity. And there's no need for this like turf war to be taking place.